Hey everybody, On the Run with Beards and Dunn is back again. Beards, I think there were some races there in Detroit Lakes the last day or two. What was going on up there?
Well, Don, yes, it was our 28th annual Beardsley races, and I'm a little bit sore today.
What'd you do?
Well, I run the half marathon every year, and oh my gosh, I ran it the slowest half marathon that I've ever run. I ran 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 44 seconds. I didn't finish last.
That's a good marathon time there, bud.
Yeah, no kidding. But we had a great turnout. The weather was ideal. And, you know, I don't know if we talked about this on one of our podcasts, but our beloved race director, Mark Knutson, on July 9th had a bicycling accident and was struck and killed. And so it was really a big turnout in honor of Mark. And I sang a few songs and told a few stories that Mark always liked to hear at the pasta supper the night before, and we had a great turnout of runners for we had the half marathon, the 25K, a 10K, the 5K Andy Beardsley Memorial 5K run and walk, and then the kids run. So we have a lot of stuff packed in there from about 8 o'clock in the morning till about noon.
Yeah, it's such a sad, I met Mark Knutson a couple times.
Yeah.
He's a super guy, and being a cyclist, and you've ridden bikes, all of us that have ever been on a bike, when you're out there on the edge of the road, you're so vulnerable, and I don't know the circumstances, usually somebody makes a mistake, and unfortunately, it's really the consequences of mistakes when you're on the road are huge. As a driver, you got to have your focus on driving, not on texting and dialing in the radio and doing stuff like that. And if you're a cyclist, you can't assume anything.
No.
I know I ride.
You got to ride defensively.
You do, and I ride with. So I like music, but I only use one ear jack.
Good advice.
And if I have a Bluetooth, I just put the one earbud in. I don't put both of them in because you would definitely want to know when somebody's coming up behind you, or if you're going to turn, you want to make sure it's clear and safe and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's so sad.
But it was really neat because at the pasta dinner, Mark's mom and dad, John and Sharon Knutson, were there, and I think 3 of his 4 kids were able to make it. The one lives out on the East Coast, and they were all there, and it was just really a nice tribute to Mark. And for a while there, we didn't know if we were going to even be able to put it on, but a lot of my good friends in Detroit Lakes, they rallied around it, and they said, we're going to get this race on, and it went off as good as ever, and I know Mark was looking down with a big smile on his face.
That's so cool. When you're, hate to say when the leader falls sort of thing, if you have good people around you that they're ready to step in and take up the mantle.
And they did. It was awesome.
It looked like a nice day. I saw some Facebook photos. One of our fans, one of your biggest fans, Jody Cheersma.
Yeah.
And I hope she hears this sometime because, Virgil Cheersma was a great runner and a good friend of both her and I, and she married into the Cheersma family, and she was a heck of a runner out of Yankton, and her dad was a heck of a coach, Bob Winter down there. And so I saw some Facebook photos of you and her and some of her friends, and it looked like you guys were having a great time.
Yeah, it really was. It was a perfect day to run. It was about 58 degrees at the start, no wind, cloud cover, which was really nice. And, it was a perfect day to have our 28th annual Beardsley races.
Good to hear. All right, let's get back to where we left off. Last time, I tell you, that was so much fun. It was one of my favorite episodes is listening to you review the Boston from the, when you have one of the 2 guys that was in the duel in the sun telling you what was going on, it's pretty good stuff. And we kind of ended up with you crossing the finish line 1.6 seconds behind Alberto. You both fell into the cops and the support people there's arms because, like you said, you were both at.
Oh, we would have been done.
Yeah.
If they hadn't been there, we would have both been laying on the asphalt.
I think you boys both gave your best effort that day. I don't think anybody was holding anything back. And then we kind of ended up with, they drug Alberto up onto the victory podium, I guess. They didn't have like a first, second, and third. They just put the winner up there.
Absolutely.
That, olive wreath or whatever that thing they put on your head. And they get a nice medal around his neck. And I think it's a real diamond, if I'm not mistaken, in that Boston first place medal. And something nobody had ever seen before or since. You got drug. you were just there, and Alberto, I don't know if he pulled you up there with him, and as they raised his arm, he raised your arm, and it's just really a great shot.
Don, that's one thing I will never forget that. In fact, right after we finished, and we embraced, and I remember saying to Alberto something like, "Man, great race, Alberto," and he turned to me, he goes, "Dick," he goes, right back at you. I've never been pushed harder by anybody in my entire life in a race. So that meant a lot. And then when he's getting the pendulum of awards, being the winner of the Boston Marathon, up on that podium with all the thousands of people and all the dignitaries, and then he pulls me up there with it to let me kind of share that moment with them. It was something I'll never forget.
The crowd must have went freaking nuts.
They
I
did.
would assume they get both, because you guys just gave it all, and it was a great race, and you both deserved the accolades that you got. And so, all right, you get off the podium, and I know I've heard some stories. What happened immediately? What happened next?
So, when Alberto and I finished, Alberto had a couple of state troopers that grabbed him to try to get him over to the podium, and I had a couple of JCPenney security guards grabbing me. They're trying to get me into the basement garage of the Prudential Insurance Building, because that's where all the media was, and they wanted to talk to us. Well, unfortunately, Alberto had to go to the medical tent, so he couldn't make it, and I should have been right in there with them. So once I got down off the podium, I've got these security people trying to get me through this mass of people. And done, it was like the L.A. freeway at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. You could not budge.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of standing there, and these two security guards are kind of holding me up a little bit. And when I feel a tug on my shorts, and I look to my right, there's a young boy, probably 8, 9 years old, and he goes, "Hey, Mr. Beardsley, can I have that New Balance painter's cap you have on your head?" I said, "Sure you can." So I took it off and I put it on his head, and he had a little friend with him, and he goes, "Hey, Mr. Beardsley, can I have that orange sponge sticking out of your shorts?" And I'm thinking, I said, "Sure you can." So I pulled the sponge out, handed it to him, and I'm thinking, man, if these boys have many more buddies, I'm going to be buck naked here pretty quick, So finally, and I'll kind of finish that story a little bit later about what happened. But so anyhow, finally, they get me into the Prudential garage, and there must be 300 media people in there. And they put me up on this kind of a stage, a small little pre-built stage with a table up there and a chair. So I get up there, and I take my shoes off because my feet were pretty messed up and sore and everything, and I set them up on the table. So done. I am answering one question after another.
You're the only one available, isn't it?
Yes.
Ludwig, the third place finisher, hasn't finished yet.
No.
He's like 4 minutes behind you guys.
Right.
And then Alberto's in the medical tent.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
So I'm just chatting. I was up there, probably an hour and a half at least.
Did you have a soda, or did somebody give you a
bottle
bottle of
there
water?
was nothing. Nothing. And I was parched. I drinking about a teaspoon of water the whole race. And so there was some media people that were behind my back too. So I turned around and sat that way, so I could talk to some of them and answer some questions, and they wanted pictures and stuff. So finally, one of my guys from New Balance who worked for the company says, "Dickie, you've been up here for 2 gosh dang hours. You got to get up to your hotel room." So I turned back around, and I noticed my New Balance racing shoes weren't there on the table. I thought, well, one of the New Balance guys must have grabbed them. So, when you sit down after you just ran a 2:08 marathon for 2 hours, oh my gosh, I could hardly get up done. I felt like it was 180. And so I finally get up to the room. Now, Don, a lot of knowledge has been gained since 40-some years ago. But, now most elite athletes or runners, marathoners, they get done with a hard race, they soak in an ice bath, right?
Right.
Oh, man, I got up to the hotel. I got that water as hot as I could.
Oh, my Lord.
And every inch of my body was aching. And I remember just laying in that hot tub when the phone rings, and my first wife Mary was there at the race and with me at the hotel, and so she answers it, and the guy goes, "Is this Dick Beardsley's room?" And Mary says, "Yes, it is." And the guy goes, "Tell him Dick ran a great race. I'm the one that stole his shoes." And click.
Oh,
and done.
Lord. Yeah.
We haven't seen those shoes since.
They'll probably be on eBay here maybe someday or something.
Well, and done. Here's the thing. So Coach Squires, a couple of days before, Coach was a devout Catholic, and he asked me, he says, "Dickie," he says, "would you mind donating your racing shoes to my church I go to, and we're going to auction them off so we can raise money for like some school kid project?" Yeah. I said, "Coach, absolutely, they're yours." And here they were gone. And here about, I think it was at the 40th anniversary of the race, my wife Jill was able to find a picture of those shoes that I wore back then, and she posted it on Facebook and said, "No questions asked. If you are the ones that took my shoes, we'd love to get them back," and never heard anything.
Now, I know the rest of this. Now, Beards, what are the odds of anybody keeping anything for 40 years and returning it to you?
Well, here's the deal.
I know.
So let's go back to the two little boys that, I gave my cap to. So, I gave my cap to one little boy, the orange sponge to the other, and then I didn't even think about it again. Yeah. Well, I think it was in 2002 or 2004, Runner's World Magazine did a big spread on our race back in 1982, of course, called Duel in the Sun. So they had all kinds of pictures in there and everything. And about a week after it hit the newsstand, I get an email from a gal. "Yeah, dear Dick, my son is a runner, and he was reading the recent issue of Runner's World Magazine, and he saw all the pictures, and he called me up and he says, 'Mom, do you think Dick would like his cap back?'" So done. About a week later, in the mail came the cap I wore how many years before. And, the night before, Coach Squires had me cut a bunch of holes in the top so it would kind of let the hot air out of my head. And back then, I think I'd mentioned earlier, they were made of paper. Right. And so I remember I was so excited. I get that cap out, and I put it on my head, and these little paper particles just kind of went, sprawling all over. And so my wife, Jill, she eventually I just kept it in a bag. I used to take it if I was speaking at a race somewhere.
You had it in a Ziploc bag.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I'd pass it around. Well, it was really starting to get kind of worn. So my wife, Jill, she shadow boxed it in a real nice glass case and with my race number. And then when New Balance, a few years ago, when they built their brand new world headquarters out in Boston, they called me up and they said, "Dick," they go, "is there any chance we could have that cap and your race number to put in our New Balance museum?" And it was an honor that they even asked me. Sure. So I talked with, my two stepsons, Matthew and Christopher, and my son Andy. I said, "Boys, are you okay if I let New Balance, put this in their museum?" And they all said, "Oh, yeah, not a problem." But they go, "If we ever want it back, can we get it back?" And, of course, New Balance said, absolutely. So cool. That's where it's at. So let's fast forward to about 3 years ago. So New Balance was having a big conference in Chicago. And one of my friends that works there is a bigwig there. His name is Kevin Adams. Him and another New Balance guy, one evening after they were all done with the conference, they went into a local pub there in Chicago. So, they go up to the bar to get a brewski or something, and they got a New Balance, gear on, and the bartender comes over to wait, and he says, "New Balance, you guys work for New Balance?" They go, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "You ever hear of a guy named Dick Beardsley?" And they're going, "Dick, yeah, he's still doing stuff for us." He goes, "I'm the guy that he gave the cap to."
No way.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So they took a picture and sent it to me, and then they called me, and I actually talked to him on the phone.
This little kid who was like 8, 9 years old, now he's 29 or
now he's like in his 30s.
And so he sent you the cap back. He kept it all those years as a
Yes.
memorabilia. And now you, just by a twist of fate, New Balance bumps into this guy and connects you two together. Unbelievable. That is
Isn't that
amazing.
crazy? I know.
Life is, I tell you, this world is, it's amazing.
Well,
All
there's
right,
still a lot of good people left in this world.
So I'm going back to you soaking in the hot tub after, in
Yeah.
the shower, in the tub. Beards, what were your, I'm trying to put myself in your mind. Totally happy, feeling fulfilled in the effort, sitting there going, son of a biscuit,
No.
I can't believe I just got second place.
Done. That's so. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last podcast. I don't think I did. But, when I crossed that finish line, I'd never been so happy in my life. Half of me. The other half had never been so disappointed. I'm thinking, I just ran a 2:08 marathon, but I got second, And I remember, back then, of course, we didn't have cell phones. I got some telegrams, things like that.
Yeah.
And a couple, it wasn't you because you understand, but a couple of high school buddies that I hadn't seen in years, they call up and they go, Beards, man, congratulations. But you mean to tell me you couldn't have made up 1.6 seconds in a race?
You had him on the ropes, Beards. Come on.
2 miles, I know. So anyhow, when I'm soaking in the tub after the phone call from the guy that took my shoes, and I'm thinking to myself, what could I have done different where I would have finished in front and Alberto right behind? So done. In my mind, I literally went back to the starting line in Hopkinton and retraced literally every step of every mile from Hopkinton to the finish line in downtown Boston. And done, when I got all done analyzing that in my brain, I was smiling from ear to ear because absolutely nothing. And done, you know this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whatever it is, running a marathon, riding a bike, working with your business, dealing with family situations, at the end of the day, if you know you gave it your very, very best, how can you be disappointed in that?
Exactly. I saw a quote just recently. I think it was Rod Dixon. It was somebody like that, maybe. And he just said, when things don't go your way, it's okay to be disappointed for about an hour.
Yeah.
And then it's time to move on. Learn
Right.
from it, put it behind you. The past is done. So he says, we're human. You're going to have that feeling of like, oh, shoot.
Right.
And yeah, go ahead. You can have that for about an hour.
Exactly.
And then it's time to look back. Don't look back. Look forward and learn. You might gain something from that. So that's cool. All right. So you get out of the tub. I want minute by minute details here now.
So that night, we go down. Mary and I thought, well, let's just eat in the hotel. So we go downstairs, and we're running into all kinds of people, and they're patting your back and all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Well, I run into George Hirsch. Remember George?
Runner.
The Runner magazine.
Yeah.
And George is still alive and doing great, lives in New York City. He goes, and his wife was with him. I can't remember her name. But he goes, Dick, I want to treat you and Mary to supper. It's on me. And so he took us into this nice restaurant, and we ate and chatted with him and everything. But then after we were done with supper, New Balance, of course, their world headquarters are in Boston. So they had rented a big ballroom at the hotel, and they're having this big shindig that night. And so Jim Davis, the owner of the New Balance Shoe Company, he asked me to make sure I was there. So they have a band playing, people are dancing, and finally it settles down, and Jim gets up on stage, and he goes, Dickie Beardsley. He always called me Dickie, just like Coach Squires. Dickie, come on up here. And he goes, what a race you and Salazar put on. And you know what? It's so, even though you didn't actually win it, it's almost just as good. And he gave me a check for $5,000, which that was a lot of money back then.
And you weren't under contract at this point with them, were you?
No, my contract had run out April 1st, and I wasn't in. That was the last thing I was worried about.
Yeah.
So then we finally go to bed that night, and about 7:30 the next morning, the phone rings in our hotel room, and it's Jim Davis, owner of New Balance. He goes, Dickie. He goes, listen, there's a white limo downstairs. He goes, whenever you and Mary decide you want to go out, he goes, you go anywhere you want to go. You buy anything you want to buy. You eat any place you want to eat at. It's all on us. But he says, I need you back here to our headquarters at 2:30 this afternoon. So I'm going, well, gee, Mr. Davis, thanks a lot. That's awful nice of you. So finally I get out of bed, and now done. You remember, usually the day after a marathon, I'd go for about a 45-minute easy jog.
Right.
So I can barely get out of bed.
Okay.
I am so sore,
Well,
every
Boston-
part of my body.
Boston, if people have run it, it does have quite a bit of downhill in it, which really hammers you.
That's what hammers you.
Yeah, it makes you sore.
And so I get up and I put my running stuff on, and I go down to the main floor, and I go out onto the side street in Boston. Done. I ran about 10 yards, and it never hurt so bad in my life when I stopped, and I turned around, I went back up and crawled back into bed.
I can relate. That every marathon felt like that to me. But anyway, so you
I
took
don't
the
think
day
I
off.
ran that whole week.
Okay.
Which for me was that was
Unusual.
crazy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
finally,
you earned a week off.
we go out in the white limo, and we go up to the north part of Boston where all the good Italian food places are. We have a real nice lunch, and we bought a few souvenirs, and finally the driver takes me back. He dropped Mary off at the hotel and takes me back to the New Balance. So I walk in, and Jim isn't with these two guys, but two of the top dogs at New Balance. They go, Dick, come on down here. So they open up this little door, and done. I walk in there with these two guys. They close the door. It's like the size of a broom closet. And there's a light bulb hanging down from a cord and a little table with one chair. They go, Dick, sit down. So I sit down, and they take this about 1 inch thick contract and plop it in front of me. And they go, Dick, just, here's a contract, 3-year guaranteed deal. Bonuses are in there and everything. He goes, just sign it. It's all good. Well, done.
Don't need to read it.
Yeah, I flunked 7th grade English. I mean, I don't know what, and it's all in this lawyer talk, and I'm going, gosh, guys, I really should have somebody look at this. No, Dick, it's all good. Well, they had me in there for close to an hour trying to get me to sign it.
Oh.
And finally I said, guys, no, I'm not going to sign it. I appreciate the offer, but I said, I really do need to have somebody take a look at it. And then they said, yeah, okay, you're probably right.
You're not getting out of this room till you sign, buddy.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of afraid that it might happen. So I get back home, and you met Bob Franzen.
Sure.
Yeah, he was at Waseca. He was a teammate of mine, and we actually roomed together for one semester. Well, his dad, Dennis, had a good friend that was a lawyer. So I come back, and he takes a look at it, and he starts wheeling and dealing with New Balance. Well, he gets it a lot higher than what they had originally offered me. And it was a 3-year guaranteed deal. So, plus done. There were bonuses built into the contract. So, if I made an Olympic team, I believe it was worth $50,000.
Okay.
If I won a gold medal, it was $100,000 for gold, $75,000 for silver, and $50,000 for bronze. Well, then they had another thing for other races outside the Olympics. If I, whatever kind of race it was, it didn't have to be a marathon. It was $5,000 to win for a win, $3,000 for second, and $1,500 for third. Well, done. Back then we ran a ton of races every year.
Weekend.
It was part of our training.
Right.
So I'm winning the Long Lake Corn Days 4-miler with about 50 people. I could have probably run it on a pogo stick and probably won. So done. At the end of the month, I'd total up my winnings, and I'd send it to New Balance. I was pulling in about 15 extra grand a month.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I know it was a pretty good deal, and I don't know if you want to say what it was, but I know it escalated. Didn't it kind of go up?
It did. It went
55.
Yeah, it was like 55, 55, 75 or something like that.
Each year,
and
it goes down.
and then with these bonuses. So that fall, New Balance has me come out to New York. I think for the New York City Marathon to, sign posters or something. Well, one of the CFO of the company, he said, "Yeah, Dick," he says, "I'm going to take you out to a nice restaurant tonight so we can chat a little bit." I said, "Oh yeah, that sounds good." And so takes me out to this fancy restaurant, and pretty soon he opens up his briefcase and he pulls out the contract. He goes, "Dick, here's the deal. It's totally our fault. We made a mistake. We on those bonuses, we should have put what races count.
Specific.
Instead of the Long Lake Days 4-miler, it'd be like Peachtree,
Yeah.
Falmouth,
Boilermaker.
these big races where there are a lot of elite runners
Bobby
there.
Crim, 10 miles.
Yeah, exactly. He goes, "Listen, we'll pay you for what we already owe you," but he said, "We'd really like to redo that part of the contract." And I remember going, I'm going, his name was Jeff, I think. I go, Jeff, I'll be honest with you. I was wondering about that, to be honest with you. Now, Dunn, I could have been a real jerk and said, "Hey, we got a signed deal.
A deal is a deal.
A deal's a deal." But of course, I didn't do that. It's probably, I can tell you this, I wouldn't be with New Balance today if I had done that 40-some years ago.
Your guys are all working together, so that's cool.
Yeah. So it got renegotiated or they redid the bonuses and everybody was happy.
So you got all right. Now let me just back up a little bit. So you partied at New Balance. Was there an award ceremony for Boston? And I know because I remember reading
there was.
Magazine. Yeah, Alberto showed up and they had bandages on both his elbows from the IVs.
From the IVs.
He kind of was wearing like badges of honor. They
so
said or
done.
something like that.
It was that later that. It must have been that evening, around 6 o'clock or something like that, maybe late afternoon. They had an award ceremony, and Alberto and I were there, and it was really kind of neat. We each got this beautiful gold-plated clock. It looked exactly the same. His was just a little bit bigger than mine, and on the top of his plaque it said Alberto Salazar, first place, Boston Marathon, 2 hours, 8 minutes, and 51 seconds. And mine said same thing, except Dick Beardsley, second place, 2:08:53. And then we got a medal, and I don't even know what happened to that medal. It's probably in a box somewhere.
I've seen your clock. Is that thing? Did it quit working?
Yeah, but we got it fixed.
Okay.
And done. You know what? Of all the memorabilia I have, I mean, that's the only thing that's even sitting out where somebody could even see it.
Well, most trophies are kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Gaudy. They kind of.
I'd given a lot of them to other races, and they just take the little name tag thing off, and
I know
Bob
Arlene was always very happy. You were very good at recycling your trophies to the Prairie Striders.
Oh, I gave a lot to Bob.
Oh, for sure. All right, so then there was the awards. You went out New Balance that night. When'd you go home? Tuesday, Wednesday, or must have been Wednesday?
No, it had been Wednesday.
Right.
So we go home Wednesday, and we fly into Minneapolis. We get off the plane, and my gosh, there's a high school band playing a
so they
song.
knew when you were coming. Somebody had
right,
said,
and that was back when you could do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there was, I don't know, probably 100 people, and there was all the television stations from the cities were there, and so they're shoving mics into my hand or into my face and everything, and it was just kind of almost surreal.
There you go. That's a good word for it.
And so finally we got out of that, and Mary and I drive back to the little town of Rush City. We lived in a 100-year-old cabin on the St. Croix River.
Are you still driving that little white Honda Civic?
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going.
And so we pull into the little town of Rush City about 12:30 in the morning, and we're driving through town. Of course, nobody's around, but there's banners. All the windows are painted. Congratulations, Dick, and blah blah blah. And then the next morning, the high school band in a day and a half learned how to play. Remember the theme from Chariots of Fire?
Sure, yeah.
They missed a few notes every once in a while, but done. Mary and I show up at the high school at like 11 o'clock that next morning. There is not a single person in that town that wasn't in that gosh dang school.
Yeah.
All the kids were there, and they bring Mary and I up on the stage, and they give Mary this beautiful bouquet of flowers. They hand me a key to the city of Rush City, and I forget who the governor of Minnesota was at the time.
It wasn't Perpich, was it?
I think it might have been Governor Perpich.
Yeah.
And that day was Dick Beardsley Day in Minnesota, and they gave me a nice little plaque and stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was. Again, it was like I felt like was having this wonderful dream.
Yeah. We were all having it with you.
Well, yeah, and you know how excited. I know how excited you and Karen were,
and everybody was just it was the talk of the town, and so did your phone? I'm just curious. I don't remember ever talking to you about this. Did your phone start ringing? Were you getting calls from races, sponsorships?
Yeah. It was done. It was crazy. I mean, I had companies calling me to
endorsements.
Endorse, you name it. Some things I don't want to name that they wanted me to endorse.
Did Wheaties get a hold of you? Did you ever eat Wheaties?
I can't remember. Although General Mills is in Minneapolis,
okay.
Who makes Wheaties? But yeah. I know, like cream of the Cremette Company. Yeah. They wanted to do stuff, and I actually think that General Mills wanted me to do something also, and just a lot of different, from big companies to little companies to would you come and speak to our school and do a running store appearances, things like that. I mean, there's only so much time in a day, and I was still
training.
I had a big race coming up, in a couple months after that. So
well, yeah, we got about 10, 15 minutes. Your first race after Boston, you must have got recruited by some really big city, some big super race somewhere to come and be like, come see Dick Beardsley, his first race post Boston. Gosh, where was that?
Done. The metropolis of Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
I wonder who talked him into that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Well done.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
You probably talked to, you knew the race director, I think, or something.
I was working at Athletic Attic, and I don't remember, this is so many years ago, but Neil Graff and Peggy, his first wife, they owned it, and Neil was an former NFL player, and he knew everybody, and he's quite a successful businessman, and somehow or another, the Diet Pepsi, that was a huge race series nationwide back in the late 70s, early 80s was going on. And the Diet Pepsi 10K was going to be, and you had been there the year before because you'd come down to see us and go to Bone Steel, I would assume. Well, the timing was like perfect. It's like, well, Beards, are you coming back down why don't you come do the 10K? We want to go to see Mary's folks in Bone Steel.
Yeah.
So we're talking from April 19th. Now it's May, I think you said 16th. So less than a month.
I got my logbook here. Yeah, Boston was April 19th.
Yep.
And the Pepsi Challenge 10K was the 15th of May.
There you go, less than a month. So word got out. Beardsley was coming back to Sioux Falls. He was going to defend his Pepsi 10K Challenge title that he had won the year before, and it'd be his first race post-Boston. Well, I just remember... I think it was at Sioux Falls College. Somebody had actually taped the Boston Marathon that night. NBC, Kirk Gowdy of all people, they had no running sports announcers back in the 80s, early 80s. And Kirk Gowdy, I think it was ABC. I can't remember what affiliate, but they had the race rights. Right. And the night of the Boston Marathon, they did like a half-hour special, like at 6:30. I remember watching it, and everybody taped it. Back in the day when we had VHS tapes, so you could just plunk it in and hit record. And I remember then you came back, and I'm pretty sure it was the night before the 10K. They had you at the Sioux Falls College. They played this half-hour video of the replay of that program.
I'd love to get a copy of that.
Me too. I was thinking that. Anyway, and so then you were there to talk to people. There's that, I don't know when that poster came out. There's a great poster. I put it on our website because I have mine framed. Yeah. And I put it on Facebook yesterday. I said, I wonder how many people still have one of these. And my daughter, Shauna, did you see her reply? She goes, we got 2 of them in our house. And they're probably all signed by you. I've got one that I've hung on to, and I know just about all your fans.
I've signed a lot of those posters.
And did you tell me at one time they had to do another run of them?
Oh, yeah.
Like it probably
few
made
runs
like,
of
I'm
them.
just going to guess like 5,000. And then it's like, hey, we need some more.
Right.
And they made another run of them.
Yeah.
And it's a classic. But I don't know if those are there. But so you showed up in Sioux Falls, and I've got on our website, a kind of a photo arrangement of you came into town, you came over to our house at our apartment, you and Mary, and Joel Brown. He called me up and said, Mike, we want to do a story with Dick. And I said, well,
Yeah, he was with the paper.
yeah, Joel is just a super nice guy. He was
Yeah.
a runner. So to get a sports writer who was also a runner was
Right.
kind of a great opportunity. And so I said, yeah, well, Dick's going to be at our house, like Friday afternoon. You guys are going to pull in like at 3 or something. And so he came over and met with you guys. We were living at Country Club Estates there in that
I
condo.
remember
yeah,
that.
Yeah. And so there's a picture of you sitting in our living room. And I remember when Joel came over, he said, hey, Dick, could you put on your running gear? Because they had a photographer. So you had to go in and put on your shorts and a pair of running shoes because you just had your blue jeans on or something
Yeah.
like that. But they wanted a picture of you in your running. And then so you did a great interview with Joel, and the article, I posted it on our website. And the next day then, I remember the day of the 10K, it was pretty warmish. It was a bright,
Yeah.
sunny day. And, in Sioux Falls, they started this thing over on East 12th Street on the viaduct, this big bridge that goes over the railroad tracks and the Big Sioux River. They closed this thing down. I put on there, I
That's
can't
right.
imagine Sioux Falls closing down this street ever again. But back in those days, for the Diet Pepsi 10K, and I wish
That
I
was
could,
a big race back
I,
then.
I wish I could remember the Pepsi guy, Bill, I think was his first name, and I apologize. I mean, my memory, he was so nice, and he was so, they were so excited to have Dick Beardsley, first race after Boston. And so I know there's some shots of us at the start coming off the bridge and stuff. It was a who's who of South Dakota running.
It really was.
I could go through Dan O'Brien out of Sioux City, Rob Kinnanen, he was a Canadian that ran for USD. Virgil Cheersma, Paul Mosling, he's a physician now, was there. Steve Moe ran for USD. I'm trying to think, I'm going to leave somebody out. I think the Sattel brothers were there, Randy Fisher. It was all of us. And, a chance to race with Dick and, kind of maybe to measure ourselves a little bit. And so it was a serious race. And to kind of cut to we took off. It was a little breezy day. And I remember.
Then I have on my thing, I went through the first mile in 4:45.
And we were with you.
Yeah.
And we all hung with you. And then we had to go up a kind of a long grinder up to McKinnon Park. It was a long uphill. And it thinned the pack a little bit. I think there might have still been 2 or 3 of us. And then we dropped down the hill by Lincoln High School and jumped onto the bike trail and followed the Big Sioux River back to Drake Springs by the swimming pool there. And when we hit that bike trail, I know, I'll be honest with you, Beards. I was pretty sure you were going to win the race. I wanted to get second so bad,
Yeah.
Beards, my best buddy.
I
Man,
know.
if we could go 1-2, that'd be
No
so
kidding.
cool. So I remember you took off, and there was a group of us, kind of struggling. We weren't able to go your pace anymore because you were, running 450s, 455s.
Yeah.
We were doing more like 5-minute miles at this point, and you broke away. And I remember there were 2 or 3 of us, and Virgil Cheersman and Virgil at about 4 miles. It's just that he snuck away from me. He didn't it's not like he surged. He probably picked up the pace just a little bit, and I was losing my pace.
Next thing he's in 10 yards in front of you.
Exactly. It's like you can't believe it. It's like, wait a minute, I was right with him. Now he's 15 yards ahead of me, and there was not a darn thing I could do to close that gap. So I'm just kind of hoping Virgil's gonna kind of hit the wall here pretty soon because I'm going as fast as I can. And we come around the last few miles. Remember Dan O'Brien came up on my shoulder with like 400 meters to go.
Oh.
Yeah, and Beards, I was not going to lose. I knew I wasn't going to
Had
catch
a
Virgil,
boy
but I
done.
wasn't. So I can't believe I'm going to brag and say I out-sprinted Dan O'Brien at the end of a race, but I actually did. And he got, and I got third. And so I was proud of my effort. And you ran just under 30 minutes, which is a tough thing to do on that course because it's not flat.
Right.
And that bike trail winds.
Exactly.
And you're always changing direction, it seems like. And it was so exciting. I remember the award ceremony was so much fun. And, it was just Sioux Falls was so proud that you came back, and ran that race. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. South Dakota, you came and stayed a semester with us at South Dakota State. Well, at the end of 1982, Every year they used to do like athlete of the year. Neil Graff obviously I think won that.
I think it was called the sports person of the year.
Well, they actually had this thing called sports personality of the year.
Okay.
And for 1982, the South Dakotan sports, and I don't know what the qualifications you have to be.
I don't either.
You didn't have to be a resident because
maybe that I crossed the border at one time
Dick
or
Beardsley
something.
was announced as the South Dakota Sports Personality of the Year for 1982.
Yes!
At the end of 82. And it was kind of a joke because I don't know if you ever had established, maybe as a student, does that give you residency in the state? I don't know.
I don't think
Nobody
so.
questioned it. But, that's kind of sometimes South Dakota has to steal a personality or an actor. Or
I'm proud that I was very proud that they,
picked you.
bestowed me with that. And
that is
South
so
Dakota's,
Oh, well, you're. I always said you're the adopted son.
Right.
And the fact that Mary is from Bone Steel.
Right,
and,
exactly.
And her family is just so well known and loved there. And
Yeah.
stuff. So that was so exciting that you came back to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we just had a great time. I wish I could remember. What's it say the day after the 10K in your training diary? Does it say anything about? Did you and I go? I can't imagine we didn't go for.
Oh, Don, that's a good one. Let me go to the. Let's see. So Saturday, I signed posters at Athletic Attic that day from 3 to 5:30.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I was working at Athletic Attic, and after the race, Neil and Peggy Graff ran, and Peggy ran really well. I think she got third in women's division and stuff.
Done.
And yes.
Okay. The next day,
Yeah.
you and I
Yeah.
on hills did a 20-miler at 6-minute pace.
I don't doubt it.
No, I'm reading it right
I
here.
know. That doesn't surprise me at all. And
Oh, my gosh.
That's funny. Well, the fact that I worked at Athletic Attic and the race ended the 10K, and I remember, I don't know if Neil, I had to go back to work. We had to go open up the store at whatever. Somebody must have been there working, and one of Peggy's sisters or something. And so I think Neil might have said, "Hey, Mike, do you think there's any chance Dick would come down to the store and hang out and sign autographs?" Like, well, heck yeah. Hey, Beards, you want to come over? Oh, sure, I'd be happy to do it. So you showed up with it 3 to 5:30. So
that's what I got written down here.
They
3
set
to
up
5:30.
a little table out in front of the mall store there in the Newtown Mall, and Dick sat there for 2-3 hours signing autographs, chatting up people. And I remember Neil was pretty excited because it brought a ton of customers in. And at the end of the afternoon, I remember Neil was very gracious and he was very thankful. And he said, "Dick, is there, do you want to help yourself to anything in the store?" And I remember you were very nice. You go, "Well, gee, thank you, Neil." And you kind of said, "I have to be honest with you, though. New Balance has taken really good care of me. I don't need running shoes. I don't need a warm-up."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, okay." And he goes, but you go, "Gee, but my mother-in-law could sure use a nice pair of, some running shoes, comfortable shoes to wear." He goes, "Pick out any pair you want."
I remember
And I remember
that.
you got some nice shoes for your mother-in-law to take with her. And the fact that you and I got up the next day and went out, 20-miler. That doesn't surprise me. I'm sure it was an awesome run, and we had a good time. Wow, that's
crazy.
Those are, I'm just grinning from ear to ear because
Me too.
The adrenaline's coming through my ears because we were kind of living the dream at that point.
We were.
I remember after the race, Dan O'Brien, Rob Kinnanen, Mosleen, all of us guys hanging out. You might have been talking to the press, and we're all kind of sitting there. Beards, and we're not being envious, but we're looking at you, and I think it was a great. I hope there's some message here. We're all going, now that's the guy who a couple, 2-3 years ago, we were racing with, training with, and he was one of us. Now he's, let's be honest, you were world class. We were regional class, probably at best. And it's like, well, what happened? Why did, and I kind of feel like you were all in. None of us went all in. I trained hard. I did 100-mile weeks. I also did a full-time job or went to grad school.
Right.
I didn't really ever feel like that should be my, what's the word? My destiny, my endeavor.
Yeah.
100% commitment. I'm focused. This is what I'm going to do. It was my hobby. It wasn't my passion. It was close to a passion. But I think I always held back, and thought, the odds of this happening are so small. I think you kind of made that jump. You and Mary had to sit down, and you said, "Mary, I'd like to do this. I want to see if
I just wanted to see
how good can I get."
Where could take and done. Our early years of marriage, we didn't have very much money.
No, it would have been easy for you to say, "Look, I just got to make more money." just for our comfort level, for our
Right.
quality. It's not like your quality of life was terrible. But
No.
it wasn't like you're rolling in dough. But
No.
because you made this, it's probably like a musician. It's probably like an artist. There's a lot of struggling musicians, a lot of struggling artists,
Right.
there's a lot of struggling athletes. And they make a decision. I'm going to, and I think I kind of look back now, and I'm proud of you that you said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw myself into this for a period of time. I have to admit, if you would have went to the Olympic trials 1980 and matched your best time at that point, a 2:20 or something like that,
right?
You probably, like you said,
wouldn't have happened.
I would have felt proud of myself and said, "Wow, well,
yeah,
I did it. I ran a 2:20. I went to the Olympic trials, and time to get
done.
on with my life." But you've got through that race and said, "You know what? I'm not done yet."
And done. And none of that would have been possible at all without Mary. Because she worked full time. She was on board.
Well, that's partnership. You two were in the same, obviously, I'm not going to say life was always rosy. I mean, I know how marriage life is. But at the same time, she was happy to let you be you.
Yeah.
And, I think you always appreciated that she
Absolutely.
was willing to do that. That's what marriage and a partnership's all about.
Exactly.
And so I think, and so we all sat there looking at you, and I think a couple of us kind of like, I'm going to keep doing this myself. I mean, if I apply myself even harder, who's to say, I think, we can get into physiological, genetic, abilities, and where's that ceiling? If I train 100%, 140 miles a week, do I have the genetic potential to run, I'm just going to throw 2:10 marathon out there. Did I ever really go to that level? And I think I got close, and I kind of, and we'll talk about that in the future here.
For sure.
The 1 hour run we did later in 82, where we'll get into that. But it's kind of like you see that there is a limit. You kind of didn't know where your limit was.
No.
And after Boston, I don't know if you still knew.
No, and sometimes I still, at my age now, I don't know that I know, and that's what gets me in trouble.
I was going to say, when you're out there running a half marathon in I don't know what kind of knee you got going on right now, but we won't get into that. But I think it's commendable. Beards, I think we better cut it off for today. I'm about shot,
done.
man.
So, at our next episode, any ideas what we want to talk about?
Let's think about this. You finished Sioux Falls, and on May 15th or whatever it was, but did you already have another race scheduled? You had more than one race.
Yes, I did. I had a race a week later called it was the Syracuse 15K with some Studley runners, but the one that I had already committed to over a year before was the 1982 Grandma's Marathon, and that's
another story for another day. But Grandma's in 81 is where you ran 2:09. I mean, that's
right.
I don't know if I'd call that your breakthrough. I mean, 2:11 at London was pretty outstanding.
But definitely the 2:09
put you at
that
another,
definitely put me.
Yeah. How many guys had?
No.
Let's just back up the truck. In 1981, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I was, I'm a student of track and field news.
Yes, you are.
I think at the end of 1981, after you'd ran 2:09, you'd ran 2:12 at Houston and got second behind Rogers. You ran 2:12 at Beppu. You ran London at 2:11 and won it. You ran Grandma's at 2:09 and won it. They ranked you in the world of marathoning number 4. The fourth best that year. And, so when you're the fourth.
That's hard to believe.
I know. You're the fourth. You're ranked number 4 in the world. What's the number 4 tennis player make a year? What's the number 4 golfer?
No kidding.
What's the number 4, anything in any sport? It's
right.
When you're in those single digits, top 10, that's a different zip code. And so, and then in 2000, here you start 1982 with a 2:08 after 2:12 which is kind of almost a training race. It sounded like in Houston, in January, but you run that 2:08. And so now you're going to Grandma's, and I can only imagine what the speculation was on what can Dick do at Grandma's this year.
And we'll talk about that in our next episode.
I can't wait.
And we want to thank everybody for listening. And if you have any questions for Dunn and myself or comments about our show, you can contact us directly on our website, beardsanddunpod.com, or you can leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, now known as X, all at Beards and Dunn Pod.
And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit the like, the comment. We'd love to have you subscribe. Go to our website and you can see a lot of photos of the stuff that we were talking about, the Diet Pepsi 10K. There's some great shots in there. And so, Beards, I just had another great time chatting with you, and I can't wait till the next one.
Me neither, Don. Have a good week,
All right, buddy. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.